Hey everyone, welcome back. Ethan had always been proud of the life he built. From the outside, his existence was a beacon of success. A powerful entrepreneur in the tech industry, a loving husband to Clara, and a devoted father to their young son. They had the kind of marriage that seemed like it was pulled straight out of a storybook. Their perfect little family was envied by everyone who crossed their path. Ethan had every reason to believe that everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed, was worth it. But the life he'd crafted was nothing but a facade. Behind the closed doors of their pristine suburban home, a darkness was growing, a rot that had been festering for months, maybe even years. Clara, his wife, the woman he had trusted more than anyone, had been systematically dismantling his world. What Ethan didn't know was that Clara's sweet smile and comforting words were simply the mask she wore while she conspired against him. And Lucas, his oldest friend, the godfather of their son, was the one standing beside her in the shadows, pulling the strings. The first cracks in Ethan's perfect world were subtle. A missed dinner here, a late night at the office there, things that were easy to explain away. But as time went on, he began to notice the oddities, the little changes in Clara's behavior that seemed harmless at first but quickly escalated into something far darker. There were longer hours spent on the phone, a growing distance between them in bed, and a chilling coldness that had replaced the warmth that had once defined their relationship. The small gestures of affection were replaced by silent treatments and dismissive glares. But the most disturbing shift came when Ethan began noticing discrepancies in their finances. It started with minor mistakes in their bank accounts, a few $1,000s unaccounted for here and there. But as the months went by, those discrepancies grew. Large amounts of money, far more than their personal spending habits would account for, had vanished into thin air. At first, Ethan assumed it was a clerical error or a glitch in the system. But as his anxiety grew, so did his sense that something wasn't right. He couldn't shake the feeling that his entire world was being built on a bed of lies. It wasn't until the evening he sat down to review their finances that everything came crashing down. A statement in his inbox stood out. It wasn't anything particularly unusual at first glance, a regular monthly report, but there was something about it that made his skin prickle. The numbers didn't add up, and when he began digging deeper, the truth began to unfurl like a rotting corpse. Ethan hired a cybersecurity firm, hoping to uncover what was behind the discrepancies. It wasn't the first time he dealt with sensitive data. He was an expert in security himself. But what they uncovered wasn't just an issue with accounting. It was a full-scale betrayal. Hidden deep within his own system were files that shouldn't have existed, files that included not just his financial data but personal videos. His mind raced as he sifted through them, each click pulling him further into the web of deceit. And then there it was. A video, timestamped just days ago, labeled bedroom surveillance. Ethan felt his stomach twist in knots as he clicked it open. He watched in stunned silence as the footage unfolded. There, in his own bedroom, were Clara and Lucas, together. The raw reality of it hit him like a slap to the face. Clara, his wife, the woman he had trusted more than anyone, was lying in their bed with his best friend. His breath caught in his throat as he watched them laugh. Clara's voice, warm and honeyed, filled the room. "Can you believe he still trusts me?" she said, her words dripping with contempt. "It's pathetic, Lucas. He's so blind, he has no idea." Lucas, the man who had stood by his side through thick and thin, the godfather to his child, looked at Clara with a twisted grin. "He's an idiot," he sneered. "He's too naive to even see it. This is the end for him. We're going to take him down and make sure he never sees it coming." The words twisted like a knife in Ethan's chest. But it wasn't just the betrayal that hit him. It was the cruelty in their voices, the way they reveled in the idea of destroying him. His own wife, the mother of his child, had conspired to rip his life apart, and Lucas had been right there beside her. They weren't just having an affair. They were orchestrating his fall from grace. They went on to discuss their plan in vivid detail, their voices like daggers stabbing into Ethan's soul. They had been systematically draining his company's funds, planting false evidence to implicate him in financial crimes, all while planning to frame him as an abusive husband. Clara's voice was steady, calculated, as she detailed how she would divorce him, accusing him of things he never did, fabricating stories to steal his fortune and take full custody of their son. Ethan's world was unraveling, and for a moment, he thought he might crumble beneath the weight of it. But he wasn't a man who gave up easily. He didn't break. Not this time. Instead of reacting with rage, instead of confronting them and giving them the satisfaction of seeing him crumble, Ethan sat there, cold and unmoving. A twisted calm settled over him. He had always believed that revenge was a dish best served cold, and this was the perfect opportunity. He wouldn't let them get away with it. No, he would make them regret every moment of their betrayal, every whisper, every laugh. As the footage ended, Ethan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had been played for a fool, a puppet in a game he hadn't even known was being played. But now, the tables were about to turn. Clara and Lucas had underestimated him. They thought they had won, that they could tear his life apart without consequence. But they were wrong. Ethan was no longer the man they had known. He was a man reborn from the ashes of their lies, and he would make them pay for every ounce of pain they had caused him. The game had only just begun. He didn't just want revenge. He wanted to watch them burn. Ethan didn't rush into action. Despite the gut-wrenching shock of the betrayal, he knew that his response needed to be calculated, precise. The last thing Clara and Lucas expected was for him to stay calm. That was what would give him the advantage, the element of surprise. If they thought he was just a victim, a man overwhelmed by the enormity of their treachery, they'd be wrong. He needed time to plan, to gather evidence, to ensure that when the truth came out, it would shatter everything they thought they controlled. They had been meticulous in their scheming, but they had made a critical mistake, underestimating him. Ethan wasn't just going to expose them for what they did. No, he was going to destroy them, piece by piece, and make sure they never saw it coming. For the first few weeks, Ethan did nothing but act as if nothing had changed. He smiled at Clara over dinner, kissed her forehead before bed, and played the part of the loving, trusting husband. He knew the last thing she would expect was for him to already have her number. He would keep up the charade long enough to put his plan in motion. Meanwhile, he used his resources to dig deeper. His company's vast network of connections gave him access to the most cutting-edge technology and expertise, and Ethan wasn't afraid to use it. The cybersecurity team he had hired was already working to infiltrate Lucas's private accounts, looking for every shred of evidence that would tie him to the illegal activity. Ethan watched from the shadows as they uncovered file after file, each one a silent testament to Lucas's betrayal, embezzlement, falsified records, and financial laundering. He had it all. But that wasn't enough. Ethan knew the key to their destruction wasn't just the financial crimes. It was the affair itself. The world needed to see what they were really like. And Clara's vanity, her belief that she could control the narrative, was going to be her downfall. She thought she could pull off this perfect plan to destroy him and take everything, but she had no idea that he was about to flip the script on her. In the quiet of his office, Ethan sat in front of his computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he orchestrated his next move. He had the power to expose Lucas and Clara's financial crimes, but it wouldn't be enough. He wanted them humiliated. He wanted them to feel the weight of their lies crashing down on them in the most public way possible. Ethan wasn't just going to expose their betrayal. He was going to make sure the whole world watched as they fell. The gala. It had always been one of Ethan's dreams to throw a gala in celebration of his company's latest venture, the culmination of years of hard work and sleepless nights. It was meant to be a night of triumph, a night where Ethan would stand in the spotlight, surrounded by his business partners, friends, and family, all celebrating his success. But now, it would be the stage for something far more dramatic, a stage for Ethan's revenge. He didn't just want to ruin their lives. He wanted them to feel the horror of being exposed in front of everyone who mattered. The gala would be the perfect setting. Ethan would host the event in his own company's name, inviting all the important figures, his colleagues, clients, media representatives, and even some of his closest friends. He would make sure Clara and Lucas were in the front row, sitting smug and self-assured, completely unaware that the game had already shifted in Ethan's favor. For weeks, Ethan had been working in secret, putting everything in place. He had hired a private investigator, someone with a reputation for uncovering the dirtiest secrets. Ethan was prepared to let the investigator dig into Clara's and Lucas's lives, into their financials, their backgrounds, and any skeletons they had buried. He knew their affair had to be the centerpiece of his plan, but he also needed to ensure that Clara and Lucas were financially ruined beyond repair. His private investigator, a man named Victor, had done his work well. The evidence was damning. Documents showing Lucas's role in embezzling funds, Clara's complicity in the scheme, and evidence of their fraudulent activities. Each piece of evidence was carefully collected, organized, and stored in a way that would leave them with no way out. Ethan wasn't going to let them escape this. He had everything he needed to expose them, and the way he would do it would leave them speechless, trapped, and utterly destroyed. The night of the gala arrived. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Ethan greeted guests with a practiced smile, his exterior calm and confident, but inside, a storm raged. He knew what was coming, and he was ready to watch it all unfold. Clara and Lucas arrived, as expected. They were dressed to the nines, their faces masks of confidence and self-assurance. Clara's eyes gleamed with the anticipation of the victory she thought was just around the corner. She had no idea how wrong she was. Ethan walked among his guests, shaking hands, making small talk, all the while watching his wife and his best friend with a calculated intensity. They were oblivious, completely unaware that the moment they had been waiting for, the moment when they would finally destroy Ethan, was about to turn into their worst nightmare. As the evening progressed, Ethan could feel the tension building. He had everything set in motion, and now, it was time for the world to witness what Clara and Lucas had done. He signaled to his team, giving them the go-ahead to begin the sequence. The lights dimmed. The music faded into a hushed silence. And then, the voice began. It was Clara's voice, laced with venom, recorded during one of their many private conversations. "Do you think he's still buying it, Lucas?" Clara's voice echoed through the speakers, her words dripping with disdain. "He's so weak. He never saw it coming. We'll have everything, his fortune, his son, and we'll leave him with nothing." Gasps filled the room. Clara's face turned white as the crowd began to murmur. She looked at Lucas, who stood frozen beside her, the color draining from his face. The screen flickered to life, showing the intimate footage of Clara and Lucas in bed together, laughing and plotting Ethan's demise. The betrayal, the mockery, the cruelty, it was all laid bare for the world to see. Ethan stood still, his gaze locked on Clara as she tried to compose herself. But it was too late. The damage was done. As the footage continued to play, Clara's voice echoed through the gala, each word slicing deeper into her own flesh. The room was thick with the sound of gasps and hushed whispers. Business partners, friends, and family alike stood frozen, eyes wide, unable to tear themselves away from the nightmare unfolding on the screen. Ethan watched it all unfold, his expression stoic, unflinching. It was only when Clara's face paled and her trembling lips parted in a vain attempt to speak that he knew they finally understood the full extent of their failure. The game was over. Clara's initial shock morphed into frantic panic. She turned to Lucas, eyes pleading, but there was no escape. Lucas's face twisted in terror as he scanned the crowd. The business partners who had once admired him, the family members who had trusted him, everyone now saw him for what he truly was. A liar, a thief, a traitor. "You did this," Clara spat, her voice shaky as she faced Ethan. You set us up. You can't do this to me." Ethan didn't flinch. Instead, he took a deliberate step toward the stage, his every movement deliberate, controlled. The weight of his words would shatter them more than anything else he could say. "No, Clara, you did this to yourself. You thought you could destroy me and take everything, but I was always 2 steps ahead. Every move you made, I was watching. Every plan you concocted, I knew." He paused, his gaze unblinking. "And now, the whole world knows." The gala attendees were no longer just spectators. They were witnesses, drawn into the drama that had just unfolded before them. Some looked at Clara with contempt, while others avoided her gaze entirely, already distancing themselves from the woman who had been so public in her betrayal. But Ethan had not finished. This was only the beginning of their reckoning. The lights dimmed again, but this time, it was not a prelude to more footage. No, this time, the focus shifted to the large screen behind them, which flickered with the images of Clara's and Lucas's personal bank accounts. As the numbers flashed, it was clear that their financial world was imploding. "Your assets are frozen." Ethan's voice was ice cold. "Every penny you've embezzled, every cent you've stolen from my company, is now worthless." He could feel the air around him growing thicker as Clara's knees buckled, and Lucas's once smug composure dissolved into nothingness. But that's not all. Ethan's voice was razor-sharp as he revealed the final blow, the piece of evidence that would leave them both irrevocably destroyed. "I've made sure that everything you thought you could take from me will remain with me. And everything you thought you'd keep, your wealth, your reputations, your influence, well, it's gone. Every ally you had has been bought out, turned against you, or is already distancing themselves from you. You've been isolated, Clara. And Lucas." He paused, the word hanging in the air like a death sentence. Lucas's face contorted with terror. He tried to speak, but no words escaped him. Ethan smiled grimly, his eyes cold and unwavering. "And there's one more thing. You wanted to destroy me, to take my son from me, to tear my world apart. But it's too late for that. You see, Clara, your son isn't mine." The silence that followed felt suffocating, each heartbeat an echo in the room. Clara's face twisted in confusion, as though she couldn't process what he was saying. What are you talking about?" she gasped, her voice barely audible. "I've known for months, Clara," Ethan continued, his words slow and deliberate. "I found the proof. I filed the paperwork, and it's done. Your son is Lucas's, not mine, and he will never have access to my wealth, to my name, or to my legacy." Clara's face went white, her legs buckling beneath her as she collapsed to the floor. Lucas, too, stumbled backward, his eyes wild as he realized the depth of Ethan's vengeance. Ethan didn't offer them sympathy. He didn't feel sorry for them. He only felt the cold satisfaction of knowing they had nothing left. No wealth, no reputation, no future. They were the broken remnants of their own making, and Ethan was the one who had dismantled them. With one final, almost imperceptible nod to his team, Ethan watched as the security personnel moved in, quickly escorting both Clara and Lucas out of the venue. The crowd parted to make way for their public disgrace, the final scene of Ethan's carefully orchestrated revenge. No one in the room could tear their eyes away. The once celebrated couple was now a spectacle, exposed for all their sins, their crimes, and their betrayal. As Clara and Lucas were led away, Ethan turned away from the scene, his back straight, his steps purposeful. The revenge was complete, but he felt no triumph, no joy. The damage had been done. The world would remember them not for their success, but for their fall from grace. The final image of the evening was haunting. Clara and Lucas, once the picture of confidence and control, were now begging for mercy, desperate to hold on to whatever scraps of their former lives remained. Ethan's expression remained unreadable as he walked toward the exit, leaving behind the destruction he had orchestrated. He had redeemed himself, but it was a hollow victory. There was no satisfaction in watching their suffering. It was a grim reminder of what betrayal could do to a man, and the lengths he would go to in order to reclaim his life.